Hello, party people. So in today's video, I'm going to discuss with you the exclusive buyer broker agency agreement disclosure. What that means is that this is the contract that you're going to sign if you sign to an agent in the state of Utah, right? So if you want me to help you, here's the paper I'm gonna have you guys sign. And if you go to another agency, they're gonna do the same thing. This is the standard form. So let me explain as simply as I can how this form works. Because it's very important if you're going to buy a home. So here's the first thing. In this contract, you agree not to sign with another agent, right? You agree to sign specifically with the brokerage of your choice. So for example, I work at Berkshire Home Services, Elite Real Estate in American Fork, right? So this is very important because you are signing saying, I am for the period that this contract lasts, and you could negotiate how long that lasts. Let's say that you sign an agreement for 6 months. You say, I'm gonna sign an agreement and I'm gonna sign it with Berkshire Hathaway for 6 months. You are signing not to your agent, but you are signing with your brokerage of choice, okay? So every agent is legally required to affiliate themselves with a brokerage. We don't technically work for this company, but we work with this company in collaboration with this company. So I have chosen to affiliate myself with Berkshire Hathaway. So you are signing an agency agreement with me as the designated agent, the agent that you have chosen that you want to work with. But the contract is officially with Berkshire Hathaway. So that's important because it basically means if I mess up, right, or if I die, or if, knock on some wood there, if something were to happen to me or you didn't want to work with me, you still are under contract, but you are under contract with the brokerage that I'm affiliated with, and they can designate a different agent to represent you. Now, of course, they could release you from that contract, and a lot of them will if they need to, okay? So you will agree that you aren't represented by another agent. This is where you make your negotiations of how much commission you're willing to pay. So for example, it's typically been, and again, everything is negotiable. You have to understand that. Typically, agencies will ask for 3% commission. So they say, if I represent you as a buyer on a $100,000 home, which is not realistic anymore, but if I represent you on a $100,000 home, I want 3% of that, which is $3,000, okay? So you are agreeing that you are agreeing to what commission that you want. So some agencies will say, I'll do it for 1%, I'll do it for 2%, I'll do it for 2.5%. Everything is negotiable, right? They could ask for 10%. You're not gonna sign that. That'd be crazy, and that'd be a horrible brokerage to work with, but everything is negotiable, and it will make that known on the contract in big, bold, uppercase letters, basically screaming at you that all commission is negotiable. Even though a lot of brokerages and agents will be asking for 3%, you can negotiate that. Next thing. There is an option to have the agent only represent you in a specific city or on a specific home or in a specific county. So basically you could say, all right, if I buy a house in St. George, like if I decide to buy a house in St. George, I'm gonna have this agent represent me and this brokerage. But if I do it here, you can represent me. So you have to specify that in the contract, and you can basically say, like, I want Berkshire in St. George, I want them to represent me. But up here in Utah County, I want Fathom Realty or something like that to represent me. So you just have to specify that you are going with a different brokerage, and this agreement that you're signing only designates them as your agent on that particular home in that particular area. That's important because if you want a different agent, now I don't know why you would. I can't really put together, a scenario. I don't have an example of a scenario why you would want an agent only to sell you a house at that particular location, but it is included that you have the right to retain a different agent for different properties or a different agent for different cities, but it has to be specified in the contract. You can't leave that out, okay? In the commission, like I said, it's all negotiable, but one thing to note is that oftentimes a seller will offer to pay the commission to the buyer's agent. So if I represent you as the buyer, the commission might be paid by the seller. Maybe that'll happen. A lot of the times it does. Most times it does. But if it didn't happen, you're on the hook for the difference between what they're willing to pay. So let's say that you and I agreed to 3% commission, but they absolutely will not pay more than 2% commission. What happens then? Well, what happens then is that you're agreeing that you will pay that 1% commission to my brokerage, because we asked for 3%, right? They gave you 2%, which 3 minus 2 equals 1. So you owe 1%, which in that particular case of a $100,000 home, they would pay $2,000, you would pay $1,000, and that's how the brokerages would get paid. Got it? Okay. Next thing, that sounded condescending. Got it? You must sign the wire fraud disclosure and buyer due diligence checklist. So I would agree. Here's what I would do. If I was your agent, I would give you that agreement. I would send all the paperwork together, right? I would say, okay, here's the exclusive buyer broker agency agreement. Here's the wire fraud agreement, which I can explain in another video. And then here's the buyer due diligence checklist. To break it down very simply, the buyer due diligence checklist is basically telling you what you're going to look for, that you have the right to hire professionals to inspect a property. You can look for sex offenders in the area. You can do anything that you want during that buyer due diligence checklist, and this is some of the things that you should probably look for. And the wire fraud disclosure basically means that wire fraud is a common scam that people use in real estate, so it just tells you what to be careful of when you're wiring money so that you don't get scammed by another agent or a brokerage or a title company, or even just someone who's saying, hey, we need your money. So don't wire something to a Nigerian prince, okay? Next. Oops, my notes got me slipping. It asks you, right, when you're signing the agreement, it has you sign saying that you will furnish your agent with all the information that they need to represent you correctly, because it's not always easy to represent clients if they don't give you the information that you need, right? So you're going to represent them with your honest financial records. You're going to present them with honest pre-approval letters from lenders that you're working with. You're going to keep them in the loop about important details that it takes for them to locate you a home. You're going to tell them your budget. You're going to make sure that they know what they need to do so that they can represent you with the utmost care and diligence, because it's their job to do a lot of things, which we'll talk about next, but it's your job to make sure that they can do their job, and to do things, as well as you can. Duties of an agent is we owe you a few things. Fiduciary duty is what they call it, and it means that we owe you our obedience, we owe you our loyalty, we owe you disclosure, we owe you confidentiality, we owe you accounting for funds, and we owe you reasonable care, okay? So obedience, we got to do what you say, as long as it's legal. If you say that you want to offer $5 on a $100,000 home, as embarrassing as it is for us, we got to do that because we owe you obedience. We got to do what you say as long as it's legal and as long as it goes with our code of ethics. And then loyalty is we owe you loyalty. I'm not loyal to the other party. Yeah, I'll be nice, I'll be cordial, but I'm here to represent you, so my loyalty is to you. So as I said in another video, an agent representing a builder, they're going to be representing that builder with loyalty. So if you go in unrepresented by me, you're not going to have the loyalty of an agent, because they may be nice, but they're representing their buyers or their sellers' interests. That's why you need an agent to go to bat for you and to fight for you in the event that there's a contract negotiation dispute or something like that. Next thing is disclosure. We got to tell you what's going on. We got to tell you what it is that we got to give you information that's pertinent for you to make good decisions. Reasonable care means that we can't be bad at our jobs. We got to make sure that we're actually, prepared, that we're doing the right things, that we're asking the right questions. We just got to reasonably care about our job, basically, and we got to know what we're doing. And then accounting for funds means if you give us any money, like earnest money, which is a deposit towards your down payment, if you give us earnest money, we have to make sure that we don't lose your money and that we get it to the right place so that you don't lose money, and that we're accountable for that money once you give it to us. And if we lose it, it's our fault. So we protect you. And then we got to help you locate the property, obviously, because you're a buyer. So our job is to make sure that you have the property located. Okay, that's part one. Part two, probably going to be a little bit shorter. We'll see.